Hi everybody. We're using the same chart again, but we're actually into a new unit here, 9.3. I've done a little cleanup. You can see there's still some rough edges. And in this section, we're going to tackle autos as a personal pronoun. This is when it can mean not just intensifying himself, herself, or itself. So we're not doing that anymore. We're doing actually a little bit more strongly. We're making this him, her, or it. Now note that I don't say he, she, or it because, so let me cross those out, we're going to do it in the oblique cases, him, her, or it. Autos can't work in Greek for whatever reason, well in part because we don't need it when we have a verb like edioke. That means he, she, it pursues. We don't need to, if we add autos in the nominative, right, as we did in that last example, autos edioke, he himself teaches, that can't just simply mean he, it has to be intensive. So that's why we don't have nominative autos as a personal pronoun. Nominative only appears as an intensifier. Alright, good. So now we can look at our chart and kind of forget some of the things that we just learned. Forget those nominatives in both the singular and the plural. And now we're looking at, in our oblique cases, in the genitive, dative, and accusative, the different personal pronouns that we're going to be able to use. And to explain this, the best thing to do is going to be start with a new sentence. So again, we'll follow Shelmerdine. This is on page 46 in her book. And her example is, Pempamen, we are sending, auton, we'll get to what that could mean, ace, tain, komain. Getting used to this to the village example. So we are sending blank to the village. Well, what can we say about this auton? Well, we know that the out is the stem. It could be anything, but let's zoom up. That's only going to be our accusative singular masculine up here at the top of the chart. So that has to be him as the direct object, or maybe a masculine object. But when we don't have another kind of masculine object, I mean, maybe if we mentioned keruka in the former sentence, we'd know that him meant the herald. But here we're just able to pursue it as if this is a masculine thing. We don't need to be more specific. So we are sending him, and him might be a number of things, but it just has to be a masculine singular accusative object, to or into the village. So note that auton here doesn't agree with anything. It's standing on its own. It agrees with him, whoever him is. Can't be the subject because it's not nominative. Can't be komain because it's not feminine. And then if it did actually intensify with komain, it would have to be here. It wouldn't be before that preposition. So we see it standing on its own, and that's going to be the marker of these personal pronouns, or I guess these third-person pronouns. Third-person pronouns, and they stand on their own. Good. Let's take another example. So that was Pempamen. Let's do egraphon. Again, following Shelmerdine's examples. He, she, it was writing, or maybe they were writing, ambiguous third-person imperfect, or an ambiguous ending in the imperfect. It could be first-person singular, it could be third-person plural. Making all sorts of little errors tonight, but hopefully the big pictures are remaining clean. Epistolane, aute. So let's make it I. So I was writing, could be they were writing. Writing a letter, that's epistolane without an article. And then aute, well what's that going to be? Again, we can cheat, but you should know this at this point. It looks pretty familiar from our first declension. Dative singular feminine. So to, I was writing a letter to, or maybe for, an intended recipient, and that's her. Who is her? Well, it could be the child, it could be Athena, we don't know. It just means her, referring to some kind of feminine singular thing. So note that here we do have a feminine noun, but it's not agreeing with epistolane in case. So we know it has to be different. If we made this autain, and maybe added a tain here too, it would be I was writing the letter itself. But that's not what we have here. We have I was writing a letter to her. Great. Last example of these. Hoi logoi, the words, autes, get to that in a second, pethusi, tous politas. Long alpha in that masculine first declension noun meaning citizen. So the words, or the speeches, persuade, or maybe are persuading, nice present here, are persuading the citizens. So what does this mean? Well, what can that autes be? Again, you should know, but we can scroll up and see in this third example, that's the form we're using, feminine genitive singular. So this means of the feminine genitive singular thing. So the words of her. We might better reformulate this whole thing because in English our possessives like to be done with possessive pronouns. Her words persuade the citizens. That's what's going on here. Subject, verb, direct object. This is a possessive genitive. And it is a standalone. Again, autes can't go with anything here. There's nothing else that's feminine genitive singular. It's not an intensifier. It's stand on its own. It's just a simple pronoun, third person, the words of her. So let's pause for a second and kind of think back over what's gone on. Here we have this possessive, and one thing that I should note, this is kind of a sideline, is that possessive pronouns of this sort, or possessive genitives, let's put it that way. So possessive genitive pronouns are always in the predicate position, as we have right here, and not, importantly, sandwiched. In part because there's no article that pairs with these. It's not the words of the herself. Basically, just know that that's not possible. We can't move that into the sandwich position. So I've been saying here, and I've been saying it as I circle or put a box around each of these pronouns, that these things are standalone. They're not agreeing with anything else. Well, that's true, and that's true that they can stand alone, but they can, in these cases, her words, persuade the citizens, we need to know something about her, and maybe she was mentioned in the last sentence. Same with this aute. If we don't know who this is referring to, or what these pronouns are referring to, we can't really make much good sense of the sentence. So these are standalone, or at least can stand alone, but they can also function in one sentence with nouns that we already know. So again, now pulling some examples from Shelmerdine, grapho, I am writing, epistolane, a letter, and I am sending it, pempo, and then just sending it autain, not sending it to her, but sending it. So in this case, this autain is referring back to this epistolane, but note that it's later in the sentence, it's not right immediately following the letter. It's not tain, epistolane, autain. It's I am writing a letter and I am sending it. Imagine if we actually broke these up into two sentences. I am writing a letter, I am sending it. This would have been just what we were seeing above, a kind of standalone pronoun. But because we have this kai, we've made it effectively one sentence, and now it's referring back, but it's not intensifying, it's just repeating it. It's repeating it again as a direct object. This was the direct object of grapho, and pempo has its direct object as aute. Good. Let's do Shelmerdine's last example before we move on. So, therapeuo, I am curing, or sorry, it's therapeusomen. So future We are curing, tending, whatever, honoring. And in this case, it ends up being we are honoring the goddess, Tain Theon, and Kai, we will, pisteos, amen, believe, and then pisteo, remember, takes dative, aute. So here we have different cases, Tain Theon and aute, or aute, dative singular, but in both cases they're working with the verb, and this aute clearly is referring back to the theon. It agrees in number and gender, if not in case, but the case usage is appropriate with pisteuo. If this were going to be a verb that took the accusative, it would be the accusative. But again, if we were to remove this kai, we wouldn't have this problem of saying, well, is it intensifying or is it a pronoun? We shall honor the goddess, and then pause, and we shall believe her. Well, this was just we shall believe her. Now we're connecting, and now we know who this is. It's just Tain Theon, or He Thea, the goddess. So when I was making a statement here that these could stand on their own, I'm saying that against these are not intensifying. That's really what's going on. Here, these are all capable of standing on their own, this aute, but they do refer back. But they're not intensifying. They're actually playing an important grammatical function in the context that they're found. Good. So in our next lesson, we're going to talk about autos as the attributive, and once we're done with that, we've basically mastered this important pronoun. See you then.